Welcome to Cleveland Conversations. The media industry, the sports entertainment industry has dramatically changed over the last 20 years. That's not a shocking statement. And there's been a lot of turnover that's happened. A lot of old veteran stalwarts have left the industry, have found other things to do, have struggled to find their footing. But then there's also a different group of people that have not only thrived, but have really advanced themselves and taken advantage of these new streaming platforms and various new ways of doing things. And it's our pleasure to welcome to Cleveland Conversations today one of these people, David Bacon, five-time Emmy Award winner, host, you may recognize him, Sports4CLE, which has regularly garners over 1 million unique views on any given month. Welcome, David.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me.
Initially, you were going to go into advertising or marketing. Yeah. What changed?
Well, I did an internship of all things at WUAB. 10 o'clock news was brand new, and it was a paid internship. So, it was minimum wage, which at the time was like $3.35. And it was as a producer. So I worked with Jeff Phelps, Gib Shanley, Ron Yance. And to be honest with you, I had never thought of getting into on-camera stuff. And it was actually Gib Shanley said, "Do you want to be on air?" And I'm like, "Well," and he goes, "Tell you what, you bring your sports coat and you work with Jeff Phelps after the show, and when you get to a point, we'll put you on air."
And in some of the interviews we've done, this has been sort of a recurring pattern in that a lot of folks have started in advertising marketing and shifted into entertainment. What were some of the skills that allowed you to successfully do that you learned?
In advertising, mm-hmm. there's a couple of things. So in advertising, it's a 30-second commercial, and you're meeting with small business owners. So it wasn't a huge ad agency. It was actually Cablevision at the time, Rainbow Advertising. And, the thing was, I looked young. I was young, but I looked young. So these people that are business owners, I have to convince them that I know what I'm doing and and it went well. But the thing is, it's a back and forth. What are you trying to do? What's unique about your business? You're basically interviewing business owners and finding out what's unique about them and what's saleable for them. And it's kind of the same thing that news is. News, you have to be able to go out and talk to somebody. Well, you used to have to be able to. It's not as critical as before, but it's thinking on your feet. It's being able to, there's the who, what, where, when, why. You have to be able to adapt and figure out this is what's unique about that, and this is what the story is. So it's all, advertising's a story. Same thing as a feature is. It's a story.
Mm-hmm. And in a previous interview, you used the phrase gotcha journalism, and that wasn't for you. Mm-hmm. What is gotcha journalism, and how does that compare to your personal style of approaching things?
So gotcha journalism in the 80s and 90s was sometimes referred to as tabloid. Big, bold, shocking headlines, breaking, and it did not really want to tell a story. It wanted to grab an attention. It was very light on substance. It was, flash and glitz. And the station I was working for at the time, back in the day, 1943, they went to that, and they had to a certain extent, it was successful for them. But I wasn't going to be able to pull that off, and the general manager at the time said, "We don't think this fits your format." And I think he thought I was going to try to convince him that it was, and I said, "I appreciate that. I take that as a compliment." And that's how I got out of news, if you will.
Mm-hmm. And prior to what you're currently doing, you spent some time co-hosting a program called More Sports. Mm-hmm. Who was the person whom you were working with?
Les Levine. So when Les, I was co-hosting it with him and filled in a little bit when he wasn't feeling as well, and it was again an education. I've been fortunate though. When you talk about the people that I've worked with and learned from, Gib Shanley was the longtime voice of the Browns, and people remember Gib for burning an Iranian flag. He can tell you what I learned from him. But Jeff Phelps, Les Levine, those are three guys that probably have over 100 years of experience that, I worked closely with.
And what did you learn from them?
I was young with Gib, I right out of school, and I remember I did a story on the Cleveland Browns. It was their offensive line, probably in the early to mid 80s, and their offensive line wasn't good, kind of like it was the last year. And I kind of went on the air and ripped them, we get done, and he goes, "It's a great report. What time are you going to be out at Berea tomorrow?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He said, "You can say anything you want on the air." He said, "But you will go into the locker room the following day so that the people you are saying that about have the ability to respond to you." I'm like, all right. There was some ribbing and like one of the guys that was on the line, Paul Fike, was like, "Oh, we're not any good. What?" And I it was like, "Paul, you guys," and he goes, "Oh, I'm just messing with you." So the players of that era respected that while you went and did that, you showed your face in person the next day, and that was
no one poured water over your head like Deion Sanders.
No. I mean, but they let you know they were paying attention, and they really didn't appreciate it. The lesson you learned was people are paying attention to you, and Gibbs, he knew what was going to happen because he had been around, and he said, "So just because you have a big voice doesn't mean you always need to use it."
Mm-hmm. And when you work with, and not necessarily replace, but where the transition from Mr. Levine, he obviously had a very loyal following, very passionate audience. With that comes a set of norms and expectations for that audience. When you were not necessarily taking over his show, but were stepping in and moving on with your new program, was this something that you were consciously thinking about, and how did you strategize and approach that?
Absolutely. Les was wonderful, and the thing about Les, we would sit and talk about baseball or football or the Brown. He's a huge baseball fan, so we talked a lot about baseball. We would talk about baseball, a half hour before the show, and Les was the same guy on the show that he was while we were just sitting here talking, in the lunchroom about it. Les had a different style. The one thing I learned from all of those guys, from Gib, from Les, from Jeff, you have to be who you are. You have to be yourself. People will see through. If I'm trying to be Les Levine, that's not going to work. It's just not. And Les, he had a rabid following, and you have to be respectful of that. You absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm. And did you experience challenges? Did people call you up and try to get you to be more like Mr. Levine, or?
No, the one thing, like Les would do an hour talk show, and it was almost a straight, it was an hour. Mm-hmm. And when you're transitioning from television to streaming, one of the things that we kind of saw was we kind of had to strategize and change it because of the way we were streaming it. And we would have done it with Les, but he got sick and wasn't able to kind of fulfill the vision. So Sports4CLE kind of evolved. We took some time off out of respect to Les, and then we kind of segmented it so it was more stream friendly and more accessible to the format that we now presented.
Yeah, talk your current show. Mm-hmm. What is the format? How much of a balance of reporting versus opinion versus interview? How do you conceptualize that?
So it is an hour long. We do 6 roughly 10-minute segments, and we've kind of tweaked it, and we'll continue to tweak it. The beginning segment now is a little bit of a quicker segment, which is news-based. We try to do, we don't want to force content, but if there's Browns, Guardians, and Cavs, we want to have that in the beginning to kind of present what an overall view of what's going on with the Cleveland teams are. Sometimes we'll do Ohio State. We don't try to do the national stuff too much because we're Northeast Ohio centric, if you will. Then there's 6 segments, and normally what we will do is we'll have 2, sometimes 3, either beat reporters or national reporters, radio hosts, And what we'll do is we do have calls, voicemails, and we always will play those just because it's the interactive thing that we're looking for from our viewers. That's the one thing you always want to be, even with streaming, you want to be interactive. It's not as easy as, phone calls, but voicemails kind of get that done. The other thing is we'll use national people to set up topics that then we will have local beat reporters give their opinion to. The way I kind of view it is I just try to keep it moving. If I have a beat reporter, I have an opinion on everything. That's just the way I am. But the guy that covers it day in and day out, I will defer to them, if you will. I will occasionally, I don't agree with that, but I'm inviting a beat reporter who's with the team all the time onto my show. It's not, the format isn't to sit there and argue with them. That's not what we do. Discussion, well, what do you think about this and that? But we'll do 6 segments of that, roughly 10. We try to break it up 2 and 2, 2 and 3, so that nobody's on for more than a half hour. And again, it just keeps it moving. Within those 10 minutes, we try to get 5 or 6 topics. So again, a minute and a half on each topic, just again, to keep things moving.
Yeah, and you're doing this 5 days a week.
Monday through Friday.
Daunting task, daunting amount of content to do. How do you decide what stories to cover?
The producer, Brian, and I will sit down and we'll kind of go through and just see what. One of the things we'll do is we'll listen to the voicemails. If people are calling, if people are picking up the phone and calling us, that's something they want to talk about. So that's what we'll look at as far as topics. And then it's news of the day. We'll go back and just see, okay, what are the Browns, what are the Guardians, what are the Cavs doing today? And we'll kind of lay it out that way. We'll look at topics if we have a beat reporter. What have they written about? Because if they've written about it, they think it's important. They think their audience wants to talk about it, and they will have in-depth knowledge that we can discuss.
Mm-hmm. And I know you're not going to answer the question, who was your most difficult guest? But who are some of your favorite interviews, some of your favorite guests that you've had?
We'll be going to the scouting combine next week, and as we tape this. A lot of the national guys are like Chris Sims, a former quarterback. I mean, I've gotten to know Chris Sims from going to the scouting combine. We do a segment with the Mid-American Conference basketball coaches. Some of them have been really, really good. We haven't had too many that are difficult. Now, in my news days, there were difficult interviews that were kind of interesting, but on the show, everybody is pretty gracious and they're into it.
And in your position, take us behind the curtain a little bit. What happens? So you go to the NFL Combine. What actually happens on a day-to-day basis? Because we all just see the interviews on camera and things that are shown to us. What are you doing during all that time?
So usually at the Combine, all of the teams will make the general manager and the head coach available. So with a new head coach this year, it's going to be really important. So they will send us out podium times. So they go to, it's in the Indianapolis Convention Center. It's a huge building. It's multi-floors. They have usually 7 podiums that are set up around the center floor of the convention center, and you'll get a spreadsheet that tells you at 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, Andrew Berry's going to be at podium 4. So you'll go and there will be a couple hundred people in that, and you have to get your cameras, you have to get your mult box, which is your audio. So you got to plug into a mult box. You got to get your camera. You got to get your tripod. You got to get your spot, because there are like limited amounts of space. And so you do that, and they don't give you, the answers to the podium are kind of generic. Then local media, the beat reporters and local media, they'll break away, and then it's kind of chaos. There's 30 or 40 people that cover that team regularly that are all circling around the general manager or the head coach. So we'll record that. We'll go back and we'll listen to it. We'll find 7, 8 topics of that that are the most pertinent, and that's what we will put in our first segment each day, the news segment, if you
And
will.
is there a pecking order at the Combine, the ESPNs versus the...
Well, the ESPNs and the CBS Sports have their own desk. They have their own mobile desk that they do their live hits and their segments from. But, you know, everybody out, there's probably 5 of those. I think it's NFL Network, ESPN, CBS Sports, Sirius XM, there's one other one. Everybody else, it's kind of, you're on your own.
And what are your favorite things to cover?
You know, the one thing is I like covering baseball. We haven't been able to find a way to engage Guardians fans the way we would like to. Our show is kind of Browns driven, so we're always working. I would love to find a way to engage Guardians fans and do more baseball. The Combine is it's a struggle just because it is, you know, it's okay. We have this national guy, then we have this national guy, then we'll still do the hour live from Indianapolis from 4 to 5. So there's hectic leading up to it. Then it's all right at 3:30. We have to clear everything aside and actually focus on what the show will look like. And then we're also booking guests as we get there. We're trying to get the national guests because a lot of times they'll tell me, well, we don't know what our schedule is like, but I'll certainly join you. So we usually will have a spot on Radio Row, which is where everybody gathers. You've heard that. Again, that's another side of the convention center. It's another room of the convention center that probably has 80, 90, mostly national, some team-sanctioned ones too, and then kind of we're in the middle of that. Browns games are fun to cover when they're winning. They're not as much fun when they lose.
So, have you been in a state of depression? No, I'm sorry. No. So, help us understand, how much preparation do you do? How much preparation is necessary to do what you do well, be it for an interview, be it for a program?
The one thing is you know, if you talk to my wife, I'm probably constantly prepping because I will always, you know, if I have 20 minutes, I'll be there looking to see what's going on and keeping abreast of it. And then Brian and I will sit down, Brian's the producer, we will sit down and kind of format out with each guest what we want to do. And that usually takes about an hour and a half. Brian will go and gather all of the clips that we use, and I'll send him some as well. You know, every day it's 8 hours to do an hour, basically.
Mm-hmm. And so we've got the unique opportunity here. A lot of people would like to be pursuing a career such as yours. What advice would you give to anyone that is looking to do what you're doing?
The thing that is really nice that never existed, all the student-run things that you can do, you should do. You need to learn the basics. You need to know who, what, where, when, why. You need to know how to do things. But there's nothing that replaces actually doing them. I remember when I was at John Carroll, there was not student-run TV stations. I would go and grab cameras, shoot football games, and do like highlight type things because that's kind of what I wanted to do. That was like my final 2 years after I started the internship as a sophomore. So my last 2 years in college, I kind of was like, I should get more of this, you know, more of what I would like to be doing. But actually physically doing what it is you want to do, the student-run productions, if that's what you want to do. If you want to run camera, go run camera. You can do that now. That is what you are going to do. There are levels of it, and the way to learn is to do it. I mean, it's not something you're going to read a book and pick up because you're going to need to be able to do things like that.
And Take us in through your mindset. So right now, the lines between professional and non-professional athletes with NIL seem to be blurring a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you approach when you're interviewing or talking to, say, a high school athlete versus a college athlete versus a professional athlete? What's different? What's the same?
Well, I'll take it even a little step further. I do a lot of play-by-play. So the way I call a high school game is different than I call a college game, is certainly different than I call a professional game. The thing you have to remember with high school kids, they are still 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. And I have 3 kids that are now in their 20s, and the way that there's a way of being critical without being critical, and that's what you need to do with high school kids. High school kids, they're playing football, they're playing basketball, they're doing that because it's fun. Nobody, even if they're NIL, again, I kind of laugh at high school NIL. There might be some that get, equipment. No high school athlete's going to make a lot of money. They're just not. That's not the way that works. But you have to be cognizant of who's playing the game. And the other thing is, who's your audience? If you're doing high school games, it's going to be the kids' moms and dads that are watching that. Always know what your audience is. That's one of the things that you have to know as somebody that's on camera or calling a game. College is a little different. You can be a little more critical because but again, they're not, to sit there and oh, this guy's terrible. That's not the way you do that. Pros are a different thing. They're expected to do their sport at a highest level. So you can be critical of them.
Mm-hmm. And let's finish up. What currently excites you about Cleveland sports? What is it? The Browns, it looks like they're going to be building their new stadium or entertainment complex. Is it the Guardians? What are you seeing? You've done this for a long time. What excites you about the next year, next 2 years, next 5 years?
Well, right now, the Cavaliers are the ones that, again, the trade they made with Harden, you can like that, you can dislike that. They're going after a championship in the short term. Browns, they got to figure things out, and they got to do it in a hurry. They hired a new coach. New coaches that don't win don't last long, and they just got out of the cycle where it seemed like every 2 or 3 years they were hiring a coach when Kevin Stefanski was here 6 years. So I'm hoping they figure that out and they get it straightened out. The Guardians, I love baseball, and they are a really well-run organization that is in the absolute worst sport they could be in. That's the sport where you can just throw money at your roster and make it work, and they don't have the money to do that. And having said that, they figure a way to develop players and compete, and they seem like they're always in it. In some ways, I'd like to see what they could do if they could throw money at the roster, but that's not going to happen. And they've figured out a way to compete year in and year out.
Yeah, that old line, and only in Cleveland could a quadrillionaire own the team that has a hard salary cap. Well,
Yeah. And people talk down about the organization, the Guardians. They have one of the best front offices in baseball. They have one of the best player developments, pitching developments. Now, the position players, there's a little nuance there. But look at all the people from the Guardians front office or the Indians front office that are running franchises. There's not that from the Browns or the Cavaliers, and it's not by mistake. People don't go and hire front office people from unsuccessful franchises to run their franchise, and they're all over the place.
Mm-hmm. And last question, where do you see all this going? With AI, with streaming, with cable being there, not being there, the fragmentation of the different platforms. What's your best guess, as someone who's seen it all and done it all, as to how this may evolve moving forward?
Streaming's probably not going away. I kind of laugh. Initially, social media was supposed to give the players are the ones that got behind social media because they wanted a voice. They didn't want to rely on guys like me to tell their story. I understand that. Upon further review, there are some people on social media that haven't earned the right to have a voice. And what I mean by that is I don't really engage people in social media because people will say stuff that they'd never say to you face to face. That's ridiculous. If you wouldn't say something to someone in a setting, why are you going to do it on, you're a coward. If you do it, if you hide behind social media, that's what a coward does. I don't see streaming going away. People will find a way to monetize it. It's accessible to the masses, and they're going to continue to find a way to monetize it, and that's probably the thing of the future. And AI is not going away either. Much to many people's chagrin, I think they're going to find a way to use AI in different ways. The one thing that was interesting, they use AI as an old assignment desk, which, yeah, I get that. That's just identifying what to cover, and then the humans have to go out and figure how to cover it.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, David, for joining us in Cleveland Conversations. Media, sports, entertainment extraordinaire, reporter, play-by-play, jack of all trades in this industry. We're grateful for your insights, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Cleveland Conversations.